epekto nga ng stroke. Yung bang yung construction ng salita ay hindi talaga maayos. At ang mapapansin nyo pa, mainitin ang ulo kasi nga naiinis na hindi siya naiintindihan ng kanyang mga kasama na kung titignan natin, hindi mo talaga maintindihan minsan kung ano yung sinasabi. So, nagkakaroon ng frustration ng pasyente. So, dito, dapat yung magkaroon ng maayos na communication. May mga pagkakataon na it will take 2 years para ma-recover yung speech. Although hindi fully recover. Kasi may mga pagkakataon na ang stroke na apektuhan yung mga muscles na tumutulong sa pagsasalita natin. So, yung mga muscle na yun, hindi siya nag-move kaagad kapag nagtatry na magsalita. Kaya ang tendency yun. May mga sinasabi minsan na hindi mo maintindihan. Kaya nga, dapat matutunan ng mga bagong pamamaraan ng paano makipag-communicate. Lalo na nga kung ang naapektuhan ay yung pagsasalita ng isang na-stroke. Yung iba pa mga epekto, may mga cases na after stroke, yung tao po, yung pasyente, maaaring magkaroon ng pagbabago dun sa ability na mag-isip or mag-reason out. Pwede magkaroon ng changes in behavior, ng sleep patterns, yung memory problems, yung poor judgment. Kaya nga itong ganitong mga problema ay nakikita na even depression. Yan, common ang depression soon after stroke. Pero usually mga symptoms may not begin for up to 2 years after the stroke. So, kung ganyan, ang isang makakatulong kung nagkakaroon ng depression, yung i-increase yung social activity. Kaya kailangan ng mga support groups. Kaya nga, dati tinatalakay natin yung tungkol sa diabetes, may support groups. Even sa stroke, meron po support groups. Merong stroke society. Ayan, yung na nakabase sa Philippine Heart Center. So, kailangan yung madagdagan yung social activity. So, pwedeng umaten sa mga ganong support groups para hindi na-depress, hindi malungkot. Kasi may mga pagkakataon na yung iba na uwi na sa pagbibigay ng antidepressant, which is maaring maapektuhan yung pagtulog. So, dapat maayos po yan. Iba-iba kasi yung epekto ng stroke sa pagsasalita, sa pag-iisip at memorya. May mga epekto rin sa muscle, sa joints, sa mga nerves. Kumbaga, yung paggalaw araw-araw maaring mas mabagal o mas mahirap after stroke. Kasi ang mga muscles sa kalahating bahagi ng katawan maaring mas mahina o pwede mo di talaga na igagalaw. So, pwedeng kamay lang o pwedeng buong kalahating katawan ang walang pakiramdam. So, yung mga muscle doon sa weak side ng katawan, yun yung very tight. At may mga pagkakataon na yung mga joints and muscle doon sa katawan, maaring mahirap na igalaw. Pwede magkaroon ng dislocation yung shoulder at saka yung mga joints. Pero kung titignan natin, itong binanggit natin ito, maaari itong magdulot ng kirot or pain after stroke. At maaari yung pain ay epekto dun sa changes dun sa brain mismo. So pwede makatulong yung mga pain reliever, pero importante yung pag-inom ng pain reliever should be under doctor's supervision. Yung iba, ang epekto ng stroke yung nagkakaroon ng tight muscle. So may mga gamot na pwedeng makatulong para dyan sa muscle spasm. isa pang pwedeng epekto ng stroke, yung bang merong problema sa bladder and bowel care, di ba? So, hindi, maari kasing maapektuhan yung part ng ating brain na tumutulong para yung ating bowels, yung ating bladder ay mag-work ng smoothly. So, yung iba nagkakaroon ng loss of bowel control or diarrhea or constipation. So, iba-iba yung nagiging epekto ng stroke. Yung iba yung nawawala ng control sa kanilang bladder na ang nagiging epekto, ihi na lang ng ihi, wala nang pakialam. Merong iba naman na ang nagiging problema, yung hindi mo paihi. May mga ganong epekto. So, iba-iba yung resulta ng stroke. So, may mga pwedeng inuman na gamot. May mga lifestyle or dietary changes na pwedeng makatulong after ng stroke. Ito madami mga dapat na bantayan, kasi nabawa, yung pagkain, yung paglunok, pwedeng maging mahirap kasi nga may mga pagkakataon na nagdadamage yung mga nerves na tumutulong para sa paglunok. Kaya ang epekto, halimbawa yung uubo o na nabibilaukan either during or after eating. Yung gargling sound habang kumakain. So, ang isa pang napapansin na nagiging mas mabagal yung pagmuya o yung pagkain. So, madaming kayo, iba sinisinok pa. Yan. Kaya yun yung mga dapat na nabantayan. Pero yung lalaki at babae maaring magkaroon ng sexual problem after stroke. So, may mga gamot na pwede, pero make sure na ito'y under doctor supervision. May mga pwedeng gawin, treatment and lifestyle changes, yun. Kailangan yun para makaiwas tayo sa stroke. Healthy eating, yung pagkontrol sa mga sakit katulad ng diabetes and high blood pressure. O may mga pagkakataon na iinom ng gamot para ma-prevent yung stroke. So may mga gamot na pwedeng makatulong. And ang ating text hotline, 0998-545-8453. 0998-545-8453. Huwag mo lamang pong kakalimutan ang inyong pong pangalan at kung taga saan po kayo. Ang bagay tuwid sa atin ng Asia Prime Center for Colonics Therapy. Para makaiwas sa cancer at iba't ibang sakit, magpa-colonics na ang tunay na detox. Tawag na sa 421-0436 at 0922-837-4750. Babalik ko po ang ating programa ang Basta Natural. Ang ating oras, 15 minuto makalipas ang 7:00 ng gabi.
Sa pagpapalindima ng ating balat, mahalagang alam natin na lahat tayo ay maaaring makakuha ng allergy o skin irritation. Tandaan na maaari tumama o kumalat ito sa balat anumang oras. Napatutulong na bastahan muna ang label ng produkto bago bilhin. Dahil ang allergies ay dulot na masangkap na paglayo ng produkto. Basta mapaalala mula sa inyong mga kaibigan sa Radyo Laguna.
Balik na po tayo sa ating programang Basta Natural. Ating text hotline sa 0998-545-8453. So 0998-545-8453. 8453. Huwag mo lamang pong kakalimutan ang inyo pong pangalan at kung taga saan po kayo. Tandaan natin, ang stroke ay isang medical emergency na kailangan ng mabilis at agarang lunas. Kasi kung magiging permanent yung damage sa brain, pwedeng magkaroon din ng permanent disability. So yung mga natural remedy, yung mga natural cures, ito makakatulong with rehabilitation. At syempre pa, yung sabi nga, positive mental attitudes, yun ang kailangan. Kasi ang importante, pag maranasan mo mga symptoms, magbigay ka agad yung treatment, madala ka agad sa hospital. So may mga early warning sign, sudden weakness or paralysis affecting one side of the body. Yung iba nagkakaroon ng visual disturbances, maaring maduling, maaring malabo yung panahon, maaring magkaroon ng speech problem, mahihilo, yung problema sa paglunok, yan, sakit ng ulo. So kung ito mapapabayaan, maaari din siyang maging permanent. So importante na ma-regulate talaga. Kasi nangyayari ang stroke, yan, nandiyan yung high blood pressure, yung diabetes, o yung pagtigas ng ating mga arteries. Yan. Alam naman natin, pagka tumitigas yung ating mga arteries, kumikipot yung daanan. So, tumataas yung presyon. At madami na tayong pagtalakay na pwede makatulong yung lysine, vitamin C, and beta-carotene para dyan sa ganyang problema. So, tatlo po klase yung stroke. Pwedeng embolic stroke, pwedeng hemorrhagic, pwedeng transient ischemic attack. Pagka embolic, yung dahilan ng blockage doon sa artery sa ating utak ay isang clot. Yung nagkaroon ng bara, na brain clot. So, pwedeng fat globules, o kaya naman sa hemorrhagic stroke, nagkaroon ng bleeding, nagkaroon ng malfunction ng arteries, pumutok. So, pumuputok yung ugat, ang dahilan nito, yung biglang pagtaas ng blood pressure. Yung transient ischemic attack, so ito temporary disruption, maaaring nagkaroon lang ng spasm or iba pa mga problema sa artery na nare-resolve pagka na-restore yung blood supply. Nawawala din yung mga symptoms. So, sabi ko nga, ang stroke sa ganyan condition, kailangan ng medical attention kaagad. Although yung iba, halimbawa, nagkaroon ng bleeding dun sa brain. So, may surgical intervention na pwedeng gawin. Yung mga home remedies, mostly dun sa aftercare, dun sa rehabilitation na mas magiging epekto. Although sa simula, yung sa prevention, pwede rin makatulong para ma-prevent yung stroke. Dami pong pwedeng natural treatment for stroke. Acupuncture, may Chinese herbal medicine na pwede, massage, meditation. Yan. Yung iba, nag-undergo ng neurolinguistic programming, lalo na yung ang naapektuhan yung pagsasalita. Or meron nutritional therapy na pwedeng makatulong after the stroke. So, Alam naman natin na madalas na magkulang tayo ng mga nutrients, yung exposure natin sa radiation, sa pollution, yan, makakaapekto yan minsan, ano. So, kailangan na mabantayan yung nutritional level. Kasi alam naman natin talagang yung diet natin ngayon, nagkukulang na sa maraming mga nutrients. Or pwede rin na contaminated ng iba pa mga foreign substances na nakakaapekto sa absorption like pesticides, like antibiotics. Kaya nga, dapat na bantayan, ano. Kasi halimbawa, after stroke, titingnan ano yung mga pwedeng makatulong, yung mga nutrients. So, may mga nutritional therapy na pwedeng matulungan yung sa stroke. Importante po na mabantayan talaga yung tamang nutrition kasi ang kailangan ma-prevent yung addition, yung second na stroke, ano, kasi mas delikado pagka ganun. Kaya nga, sa mga research, sabi ni Dr. Linus Pauling, yung tamang dosage ng vitamin C and lysine, yun ay makakatulong para ma-prevent natin or ma-treat, ma-reverse any cardiovascular problem. So, pwede namang subukan, wala namang masama, ano. At binabanggit pa niya yung mga pwedeng gawin. Kailangan kasi properly hydrated yung ating katawan. So, iinom ng madaming tubig. Ngayon, pagka gawin na, reklamo, ihi, ang solusyon, dagyan nyo ng konting asin. Yung inyong mga iinumin. Konting-konti. Yan. Makakatulong yan para mabalance yung water level sa ating katawan. Kasi kung titingnan natin dun sa prevention, kailangan talaga healthy diet. Kailangan mas mataas yung intake ng fruits, vegetable, fish, at saka yung mga herbs katulad ng garlic. Yan, yung bawang approved ng ating Department of Health para sa cardiovascular problem. Sabi ko kanina, ang isang kailangan ay vitamin C. So yung pagkain ng mga prutas na maasim, oranges, dalandan, lemon, at iba pa mga citrus fruits, pwede makatulong para mapababa yung risk natin for stroke dahil nga doon sa compound na flavonoids. Yan, yung flavonoids. So, alam naman natin na may mga pagkakataon talagang hindi natin ma-achieve yung pagkain ng sapat na dami ng prutas at gulay. Kaya doon napapansin yung pag-inom ng mga supplements. Kasi nga hindi na natin maiwasan dahil sa talagang bumabagsak yung nutrient level ng ating mga kinakain. Madaming pwedeng gawin para ma-prevent yung stroke. May diet, may pagkain na, may mga herbal medicine na pwede makatulong. Pero kailangan mapababa ang cholesterol. Iwasan manigarilyo, iwasan yung pag-inom ng alak. Kailangan adequate yung fluid intake natin. Sapat yung tubig sa katawan. Kaya nga, importante na mabantayan talaga yung water intake natin. Sa conventional medicine, simple lang yung sabi nga, cost-effective way to treat patient at risk of having second stroke, second heart attack. So, pinagkumpara yung isang gamot at saka yung isa pang gamot, clopidogrel saka aspirin. Nakita mas maganda yung aspirin. Kasi kung titingnan natin, yung mga nutrients na kailangan, nandiyan vitamin E. Yan. Sa conventional medicine, yung pagbibigay ng aspirin. So, importante na mabantayan itong mabuti kasi nga, lalo na sa pag-inom ng aspirin, yung long term, pwede makasakit ng sikmura. So, madami pang mga pwedeng gawin, mga pwedeng makatulong kapag kayo'y na-stroke. Ang bagong idiatid sa atin ng Asia Prime Center for Colonics Therapy. Yan, ang ating text hotline 0998-545-8453. Magbabalik pa po ang ating programang Basta Natural.
Ito
Kami po'y kasapi ng KBP, kapisanan mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas. Ang oras natin alas 7:30 ng gabi.
Next time on the TED Radio Hour, we ask, what's your biggest fear? Just people.
One of my most vivid fears is being on a plane imagining it crashing.
I'm scared of speaking on the phone. Is there anything that you're afraid of right now?
No.
I'm Guy Raz. We'll explore fear and fearlessness. It's on the next TED Radio Hour from NPR.
TED Radio Hour, every Friday at 8 in the evening and Saturdays at 12:30 in the afternoon on Radyo Agil.
Mahalagang paalala sa lahat o pagsusunog. Laki na lahat ng miyembro ng pamilya ay alam ang gagawin kapag may nangyaring sunog. Siguraduhin na lahat ng pinto at bintana ay maayos na nabubuksan. Pamili ng safe netting place sa labas ng bahay. Malaki rin ang maitutulong kung makapagsasanay ang bawat miyembro ang magkaroon ng fire door. Sikapin din na bawat silid ay may bell at flashlight in case of emergency. Mag-ingat, hindi dapat maging pabaya. Isang mahalagang mensahe mula sa Radyo Agil. Kita para sa mahilig tumawa. Sa isang pag-aaral ay lumalabas na ang exposure to humor ay may harmful effect sa tao. Ulit ang pagbaba ng level ng stress hormone cortisol at epinephrine. Maliban pa yan sa positibong epekto sa ating cardiovascular system. So, huwag kalimutang tumawa para sa positibong epekto sa body hormones. Isang paalala mula sa inyong mga kaibigan dito sa Radyo Agil.
Pinakawan, pinapali, pinatipid ng social media ang paraan ng komunikasyon at pagbabahagi ng impormasyon.
Isang mabuting bagay ito para sa ating mga gumagamit. Subalit, gaya ng kasabihan, ang lahat na sobra ay masama.
Ang social media ay may kaakibat na responsable at maingat na paggamit upang hindi mapinsala at huwag makakaminsala. Tandaan ang ilang paalaala sa paggamit ng social networking site.
Huwag magbibigay ng private information tungkol sa inyong social media account. Sugaliin ang magpalit ng password para mapanatiling privado ang inyong social media account. Huwag gamitin ang inyong account para manira o manakit ng kapwa sa mga social networking site. Pag-isipan ng mabuti ang information na sasabihin bago i-post sa inyong account.
Maging matalino sa paggamit ng social network. Isang paalaala mula sa Radyo Agil. Edukaksyon. Aksyon para sa edukasyon. Edukaksyon. Programang katuwang sa ikaangat ng kalidad ng edukasyon. Edukaksyon. Protektahan ang karapatan ng mga Pilipinong mag-aaral. Edukaksyon. Sa Radyo Agila. Tuwing Sabado, sa ganap na alas 8 hanggang alas 9 ng umaga, dito lamang sa Radyo Agila.
Kumusta? Habi? Lingala ba? Sabay di? Sikaw? 10 countries come together as one, building a better life and stronger economy for everyone. Learn about the culture and history of every region. Learn the importance of being an ASEAN citizen. Tune into ASEAN Hour. Sundays, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Radyo Agila. Be connected to the world and help build a safe community for everyone. ASEAN Hour.
Balik na po tayo sa ating programa ang Basta Natural. Ang ating text hotline 0998-545-8453, 0998-545-8453. Huwag niyo lamang pong kakalimutan ng inyong pong pangalan at kung taga saan po kayo. Ang pinag-uusapan natin na itong stroke. Yan, may mga supplements na pwedeng makatulong para ma-prevent yung stroke. Ayon sa International Journal of Preventive Medicine na published noong 2013, yan, merong mga nutrients na makakatulong, folic acid, vitamin B12, vitamin E, vitamin C. Yung mga B vitamins, kabilang din ang fish oil. Although yung iba nag-change ng diet, nagiging vegetarian, pero pwedeng makatulong yung DHA na pwede manggaling sa mga algae. So may mga algae na maganda yung DHA compound like AFA na makakatulong to prevent yung stroke. Ginkgo biloba, isa yan para ma-improve yung circulation at magpalabnaw ng dugo. So ang daming mga pwede makatulong, magnesium, yan. Pwede, any multivitamins with vitamin B6, B12, and folic acid. So, sa mga pag-aaral, yung mataas na dose ng vitamin supplement makakatulong para ma-reduce yung risk of a second stroke. Even dun sa death and cardiac events. So, it was published in November 2005 sa isang journal na ang title ay stroke. So, sa supplement, vitamin B9, B6, and B12. So, yung nutrients na yan, tatlo, B9, B6, and B12, nagpapababa ng homocysteine. Itong homocysteine, isa itong amino acid na nililink sa heart disease. So, may mga study na ginawa na tungkol dyan sa mga nutrients. Talaga nakita nila na malaking tulong yung mga nutrients, vitamin B9, B6, and B12. At saka yung vitamin C. At saka magnesium. Sa isang journal, Annals of Neurology, pinakita dun sa isang study na yung mga B vitamins reduce the long-term risk of depression after stroke. So may study na ginawa sa Australia na pinakita na yung kakulangan ng B-complex talagang may epekto sa stroke. Mas tumataas yung depression. Kaya isa yun sa dapat ibigay, vitamin B-complex. So, dun sa binanggit natin, pinapababa yung homocysteine. At ang isa pa, like yung folic acid, may protection against a certain type of stroke. Sa pag-aaral, yung folic acid or folate, may vitamins na nakukuha sa mga green leafy vegetables, sa fruits, sa dried beans, pinapababa yung risk of hemorrhagic stroke. Yung stroke na nagkakaroon ng bleeding sa ating brain. Ginkgo biloba pwede rin makatulong. Yung iba pa mga nutrients like resveratrol, yan, pwede rin po yan. So kailangan na mabantayan ito, kasi may mga pwedeng binanggit natin yung mga supplements na pwedeng makatulong, sana ay nakuha po ninyo. So, ang isang binabanggit natin, vitamin C and lysine. Ayan. Makakatulong yan para ma-prevent natin yung mga cardiovascular problem. So, ang daming mga nutrients na pwede makatulong. Halimbawa, yung vitamin A, pwede rin yan. Yung mga yung mga vitamin A, mga carotenoids. Ayan, may mga study na talagang nagpapakita na malaking tulong yan. So, ang stroke prevention ay dapat na laging isa-isip. Dapat yung mga risk factor mapababa, yung diet dapat na maging maayos. Hanggat maaari iwasan yung mamantika o mga piniritong pagkain. Tandaan natin, malaki yung influence ng diet sa stroke prevention. Bawa, pagkain ng prutas, gulay, at yung dalawa na yan, makaka-reduce yung risk natin. Kaya nga, importante na matiyak natin na maganda yung level ng mga nutrients sa ating katawan for stroke prevention. Pangunahin, fish oil, ginkgo biloba, yung dalawa na yan, pwedeng makatulong. Ang ating text hotline 0998-545-8453, 0998-545-8453. Huwag niyo lamang kakalimutan ang inyong pangalan at kung taga-saan po kayo. Ang dami na mga tanong. Dr. Tubang, magaling sa dementia at Alzheimer's ang coconut oil or BCO. Paano po ang pag-inom mula kay Mary ng Laguna? Pwede po siya makatulong, Pero iba-iba yung approach kasi isa lang yan sa pwedeng makatulong. So kung yan, okay lang kayo uminom at saka ng iba pa. Kasi ang dami-dami yun na dapat na bantayan sa virgin coconut oil, yung iba may peke. So maging maingat lang tayo sa pagbili ng virgin coconut oil. Merong mga available na nakakapsul. Yun, okay lang yun. Dok, ano po pwede ko i-rely na herbal kapag masakit ang ulo ko, buntis po ako, mula kay Mabel ng Tayabas. Wala pong pwedeng mga anumang herbal medicine. Kailangan nyo ay pahinga. Yan, kailangan ng pahinga pagkagayon. Saka proper hydration, uminom ng tubig. Ako po si podcaster ng Pola Oriental Mindoro. 4 na taon ng stroke. Ang problema ko lang po, sumasakit po tuhod ko. Anong nagalagawad sa rayuma. Sa abroad pa po ako na stroke, 65 taon na po ako. Ganito po, siling na buyo. Yan. Yan ang isa sa tulong po sa inyo para ma-improve yung condition. Hindi nyo naman kailangan gayatin. Lunukin nyo lang ng buo. 2 tuwing pagkatapos kumain. Yung pain, madaling nawala yan sa sila. Ito mula kay Sherry ng Pulilang, Bulacan. Tanong ko lang po, anong mainam na gamot? Madalas na makita ang ulo ko at ang mata ko, hirap din po ako matulog sa gabi. 43 na po ako. Normally sa ganyan, mag-melatonin. So makakatulong yan para mahimbing yung tulog. Yun yung mga dapat na gawin. At saka proper hydration. Yung sapat na dami ng tubig para talagang maging magandang circulation, mawala yung pagsakit ng ulo. Ang gamit natin sa atin ng essential supplements, kombinasyon ng antioxidants, immune booster, at vitamin C with lysine, zinc, grapeseed extract, at coenzyme Q10 na kailangan para maging malakas ang immune system at cardiovascular system. Essential supplements, pangunahing sustansyang kailangan ng ating katawan. Tawag daw, mag-text sa 0998-545-8453, open for dealership. Ito mula kay Benedict na Giginto, Bulacan, yung essential supplements, saan po makaka-avail. Yan, sa Asia Prime po meron, o kaya i-text ko po sa inyo kung paano po kayo makakabili. Kasi pwede kong ipadala dun sa mga courier company, LBC o JRS. Wala kayo dito at yan sa ng Batangas. Dok, ano pong gamot? May gallstone po ako. Yan, ang binabanggit natin madalas yung pag-inom ng apple juice at saka ng Epsom salt. Sa pag-inom ng apple juice, usually 6 na araw, 6 na baso bawat araw. So, medyo madami. Tapos sa 6 na araw ay hindi maghahapunan. So, doon iinom ng yung first dose ng Epsom salt sa umaga. Yung first dose ng Epsom salt sa gabi, mga alas 6 ng gabi, then after 2 hours, yung second dose ng Epsom salt. Pero sa umaga, dapat ang diet light lang hanggat maaari. Light lang yung diet. So, alas 6, yun ang unang inom, alas 8, yun ang pangalawa. Tapos after 2 hours ulit, alas 10, yun na yung pag-inom ng olive oil para ma-flush yung gallstone. So may program po para dyan, titingnan din natin yung laki. Si Jenang Ojoan Ramon, yun din ang tinatanong niya, yung tungkol sa Epsom salt. Yan, at sa olive oil para sa gallstone. And papadalhan ko po kayo ng procedure, magsusulat ako para mas maintindihan nyo yung mga pwedeng gawin. Mula kay 400 din ng Ligas Specific, take po ako ng 2 kutsarang apple cider vinegar, 10 kalamansi, 1 kutsarang ng isang ligandang ng tubig. Tama po ba ito? And okay lang po, apple cider vinegar at tubig. Huwag naman na yung kalamansi. Yan, okay lang yung apple cider vinegar. Wala kay Marvin Lorenzo ng La Pastola. Good evening po. Sumasakit po bawang balakang ko. Madaling araw halos di ako maka-eat. Pagkaiga ko, nagpa-checkan mo po, ihikli naman. Ano po kaya? To si Sayan po ako, 30 years old. Ayan, ang isang pwedeng gawin, ma-ultrasound yung tiyan. Ano, makita talaga yung kung ano yung problema. So, dapat mabantayan po sa ganyan kasi na yung pagsakit ng balakang, so it could be sign na may kidney problem, pero kailangan i-work out. Ito mula kay Junior ng San Francisco, Quezon, ang pong gamot sa mahid ang kalating katawan, lalo na pag malamig ang panahon. Pag malamig ang panahon, inom kayo ng tubig. May konting asin. Yun, makakatulong po yun. Sa pagmamahid, pwedeng vitamin therapy, yung nutrient therapy, vitamin B12, vitamin C, saka magnesium. Wala kay Grace na Nueva Ecija, Dok, pwede ba gabi-gabi ako uminom ng tubig na may asin? Madalas po kasi ako umain sa gabi. Pwede po, pero mga 20 days lang. So, okay lang yung asin, basta konti lang just to retain yung water. Dami mga texter natin. Huwag mo kakalimutan ang pangalan kung tagisaan po kayo. Mula kay Melo ng Bay sa Quezon City, ang palakbok maganda ba yung combination ng perosulfate, folic acid, vitamin B complex, anemic. Okay lang po yun. So, okay po yun. Mas maganda kung additional na vitamin C para mas sa ganyan, makita talaga yung mabilis na epekto. Ito ba na magkakaalmoranas kung lagi iinom ng sili mula kay opya ng Lucena? Hindi. Kasi kung totoo yun, madaming mga Bicolano at mga Chinese ang nagkaroon ng problema. Yung mga Chinese mahilig din sa maanghang. Dahil ang almoranas hindi po yung sili. Kaya okay lang uminom ng sili. Ang isang dapat nabantayan talaga sa ganyan, yung mga simansikmura, yun may mga caution. Mula kay Mr. Tapawa ng Quezon City, Doc, ginawa ko po yung green apple juice detox. Nalabas po sa dami ko, bilog-bilog kasi laki ng buto ng mais. Ano po yun, Mr. Tapawa ng Quezon City? Yun po yung gallstone. Normally, after ng flashing, lalabas. So, idodumi. So, yun yung gallstone. Ilang beses po ang pag-inom ng yung kadulaba at fish oil before or after meals mula kay Lunang Lucena. Pwede siyang before, pwede siyang after meals. Lagyan ko bulaba 40 mg lang. Yung fish oil po, 400 to 1,000 international units. Ako sa Milo ng Quezon City, 63 years old. Tanong ko lang kung ang narbo sa isang ulo ng sakit sa puso at pwede ma-stroke. Anong mabuting kainin? Take sa mga papaya nyo. normally, nabanggit ko kanina, yung iba nagkakaroon depression after ng stroke. So, yun yung dapat na iayos doon sa mga kakainin. Yan, medyo ingat lang, para talaga hindi lang makaiwas sa stroke, kundi sa iba pa mga problema pang kalusugan. Mula kay Beth, naikabuti ilang beses po maglagay ng asin sa tubig. Kasi madalas ang pag-ihi ng asawa ko sa araw at gabi po yan sa pagbangon. Yan, may post-paid po pero di naman malala, bago lang po. And mas maganda po kung personal kong ma-evaluate, pero usually dun sa paglagay ng tubig na may asin, konti lang na asin, 2 kurot lang. Yun lang yung kailangan. Okay lang siya na tuloy-tuloy. Ito mula kay Violin ng Cabiao, maybe siya. Dok, yun po bang sili kahit tangat? Pwede po ba inumin? Pwede po, kung medyo malaki, dihatiin nyo lang. Okay ba ang karbaba na saging na kainin araw-araw mula kay Rudy ng Tagum? Okay lang po. Tulong yung saging para mapataas yung potassium level natin sa katawan. Ang dami mga tanong, pero ang isang napansin natin, yung mga tanong minsan, kailangan na po ng doctor's intervention. So, kaya natin madalas na binabakit, magpakonsulta po kayo para mabantayan talaga natin yung mga problema. Tatay ko po na nagsop since 2009, hindi po siya nakapag-therapy. Kung makapag-therapy po ba siya, posible po bang naayos pa ang lakad? Ayan, may pili po ang right leg niya. Pwede pong makatulong, malaki ang pwedeng maitulong yung natural medicine sa ganyan. It could be acupuncture or massage. Pwede po yun. Para mawala yung mga spasm, may mga pagkakataon na ninigas yung mga muscles. So, matutulungan yun ng vitamin C infusion. Ating text hotline 0998-545-8453, 0998-545-8453. Huwag niyo lamang pong kakalimutan ang inyo pong pangalan at kung taga saan po kayo. Doon sa mga nagtitext, katulad ni Lita, ano yung pwedeng gawin para makapagsimula para doon sa girls. So, mas maganda po kung personal ko muna ma-evaluate para matingnan natin muna, mabantayan mabuti. Dali nyo rin po yung ultrasound, po, para makorelate natin. Ang bilis po ng ating panahon, mamaya-maya ay May na. Yan, ngayon po ay April 8. So, dapat na maging maingat tayo, lalo na sa ating mga iniinom na tubig dahil nga sa yung kondisyon ngayon, importante, na madaming tubig para maging maganda yung ating circulation. Ulitin ko lang ang ating text hotline, 0998-545-8453. 0998-545-8453. Huwag niyo lamang kakalimutan ang inyong pong pangalan at kung taga saan po kayo. may nagturo po, water therapy for glasses pagkagising. 160 ml kasabi ko kinaya, kaya sinuka ko lang lahat yung tubig. Ano po kaya differentiate ko kasi ganun po kahit kape, lagi lang sinusuka ko din po. Yan. Sobra po yung sobra yung 4 glasses. Kailangan ng water, pero wag naman yung madaming inom. Sa umaga, 2 baso lang. Yan. May mga pagkakataon yung nagsusuka kasi hindi na ma-handle. May mga epekto kasi ng stroke na gano'n yung nangyayari na pwedeng mapektan pati yung function ng ating sphincter, yung nasa pagitan ng stomach at saka ng esophagus. Yan yung mga dapat na iyan. And wala na po akong oras. Bukas po ulit, magkarinigan tayo 2:30 hanggang alas 4 ng hapon. Ako po si Dr. Erwin Torres. Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat.
Mag-Dr. Alfred's Pure Mangosteen Capsule LT araw-araw. Proteksyon ng katawan, palakasin ng immune system, labanan ng free radicals, pollution, chemical, stress, at unhealthy lifestyle. Tandaan, kung pure, natural, and organic ang hanap mo, mag-Dr. Alfred's Pure Mangosteen Capsule LT. No preservatives, no additives, no chemicals, at US FDA and Philippine BFAD approved sa presyong kayang-kaya. Mabibili sa lahat ng Mercury Drugstores nationwide.
Mahalagang paalala, ang Dr. Alfred's Pure Mangosteen ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamitin panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Dr. Alfred's Green Coffee 4+1 Strong and Light Coffee now available at Generica Drugstores nationwide.
Is the TED Radio Hour.
We've had to believe the impossible things. True nature of weapons just beyond.
Those talks, those ideas, adapted for radio. From NPR.
I thought babies and children are actually more conscious than we are as adults. Learning is one of life's most essential activities, and it begins much earlier than we ever imagined.
It's quite fashionable to say that the education system's broken. It's not broken. It's just that we don't need it anymore.
This episode, Unstoppable Learning. First News. It's the TED Radio Hour from NPR. I'm Guy Raz, and on the show today, the way we learn. And on a cold morning here in Washington, not so long ago, we called up Sugata Mitra. He was in Calcutta, where it's 110 degrees.
So
My God. Are you inside?
I am inside, and it is a comfortable 105 in here. That should be fine.
Now, the where of the story is important because in this very hot place, Sugata Mitra happened upon a discovery that, if proved true, could quite possibly transform the way we think about learning. So first, Sugata.
I'm a professor of educational technology at the University of Newcastle in England.
But most of his research over the past few decades has happened in India, and that's where he set out to prove that learning, it doesn't have to be taught. Call it unstoppable learning, something that happens at every stage in life. And on the show today, we'll hear from TED speakers who are trying to figure out how it happens, how our minds and even our bodies assimilate lessons from the world around us. So in Sugata's case, his story starts about 2 decades ago.
I am trained as a physicist, and I worked most of my early life as a software developer.
This was back in the early 1990s. Computers weren't as common, and Sugata was actually teaching courses in computer literacy.
These courses are expensive, so they are attended by students who have a lot of money.
Sugata would watch those students get to that moment, that gee whiz moment, when they'd solve a problem or figure out a technique, and he loved it.
Except that, I don't know why I used to feel a little uncomfortable about the fact that the gee whiz was getting to the rich kids and not getting to the poor kids. So wouldn't it be nice if there was some way to get it into the hands of the poorer kids and see what they do?
Nice thought. And for a couple of years, that's all it was. A nice thought. Until 1999. When Sugata was working in New Delhi.
And my boss actually wanted me to find out how
kiosks, computers in public spaces work, because they were just about coming in all over the world. And, there were computers in airports and computers in railway stations. And he said, this looks like big business. And I said, yeah, so shall I try it? And he said, yeah, go ahead and try it. And then I thought diabolically, here's my chance. Why don't I try it in the slum next door? And why don't I make it 3 feet off the ground rather than 4 or 5 feet? And this I did rather quietly. I waited to see what would happen.
This is actual audio from Sugata's research. What happens when you stick a computer in a hole, in a wall, in a slum, with no running water, limited electricity, and crowded schools?
Just to see what would happen.
Here's Sugata's TED Talk.
If I gave a computer to children who never would have one, didn't know any English, didn't know what the internet was. The children came running in, it was 3 feet off the ground, and they said, what is this? And I said, yeah, it's, I don't know. So they said, why have you put it there? I said, just like that. They said, can we touch it? I said, if you wish to. And I went away.
So you went there and you was in the wall of this village, and you just left it there. You just walked away.
That was it, but it wasn't exactly walk away in the IT sense, because that computer was on the network. And I had a piece of software in those days called Desktop. And I had that on in my computer in my office, so I could see the screen of the other computer from where I was. That screen remained static for hours and hours and hours. And then all of a sudden, it started to move and change. And then Microsoft Paint appeared on it. And then Microsoft Word appeared on it. And then I saw words being written on that screen. And I couldn't believe it because there was no keyboard. So that's when I got up off my chair in my office and went rushing back to see what on earth they were doing, and discovered that they had actually figured out the character map, which I think even most users today, 15 years later, wouldn't know what that is. They figured that out, and they were using the character map to type things like, my name is Kunku, or something like that on the screen.
It was incredible. In fact, it was almost a little too good to be true. So Sugata Mitra told a colleague,
my colleague said a simple solution. One of the students must have been passing by, showed them how to use the mouse. So I said, yeah, that's possible. So I repeated the experiment. I went 300 miles out of Delhi into a really remote village where the chances of a passing software development engineer was very little. I repeated the experiment there. There was no place to stay, so I stuck my computer in, I went away, came back after a couple of months, found kids playing games on it. When they saw me, they said, we want a faster processor and a better mouse. So I said, how on earth do you know all this? And they said something very interesting to me. In an irritated voice, they said, you've given us a machine that works only in English, so we had to teach ourselves English in order to use it. Teach ourselves, said so casually.
To change the way we think about learning. Maybe learning, or the way we teach things to kids, maybe a lot of it can happen on its own, he thought, without any grown-ups around.
That's done on a certain way of learning, which kids obviously knew how to do, and adults were not sure of how to use. And indeed, there were adults who said, it's totally unstructured. It's bits and pieces of information. Somebody even called it, I think somebody from the United States called it minimally effective education. So I was actually confused.
So Sugata set out to study just how effective this kind of learning was. He took his computers and he tried to repeat his experiment in different parts of India.
Which was really hard because, adults in those days in rural India, they said, "Are you sure you know what you're talking about? Our children are going to teach themselves how to use a computer. Come on, tell me something else."
But eventually, he convinced 18 different villages.
A village in Jammu and Kashmir called Gandharva, a place in western India in the deserts of Rajasthan called Khuri, a village called Pallam, on an unknown stretch of the most brilliant beach I've ever seen, a village in Karnataka, a couple of 100 kilometers from Bangalore, called, hold your breath, Kallu Devanahalli, which means the village of the black god, or something like that.
Over and over again, in each village, children standing in the summer heat would try to figure out how to use a computer. And remember, the computer, it wasn't even programmed in their native language.
And then we measured the children's computer literacy skills. We plotted it on a graph, and it was like an experiment in physics. It was straight up, everywhere, exactly at the same rate. So I started publishing. I published everywhere. I wrote down and measured everything. And I said, in 9 months, a group of children left alone with a computer in any language would reach the same standard as an office secretary in the West. I'd seen it happen over and over and over again. But I was curious to know, what else would they do if they could do this much? How far will it go? And where does it stop? I decided I would destroy my own argument by creating an absurd proposition. And that's when I designed an experiment doomed to fail. Because I made a hypothesis which was absurd. The hypothesis was, can 12-year-old Tamil-speaking children in a village in southern India teach themselves the biotechnology of DNA replication in English 10 years ahead of their time, clustering around a roadside computer?
I don't know if med students at Harvard could teach themselves that.
Yeah, precisely. So I did that, I was just cussed. I just thought, well, I know this is going to be very cruel, but somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to say, look, there are some things you cannot do without a teacher. So I did the experiment. I said, I'll measure them, they'll get a 0. I'll spend a couple of months, I'll leave it for a couple of months, I'll go back, they'll get another 0. I'll go back to the lab and say, we need teachers. The children came rushing and said, what's all this? So I said, it's very topical, very important. It's all in English. So they said, how can we understand such big English words and diagrams and chemistry? So by now I had developed a new pedagogical method. So I applied that. I said, I haven't the foggiest idea. And anyway, I'm going away. So I came back after 2 months and the children trooped in and said, we've understood nothing. So I said, well, what did I expect? So I said, okay, but how long did it take you before you decided that you can't understand anything? So they said, we haven't given up. We look at it every single day. So I said, what? You don't understand these screens and you keep staring at it for 2 months. What for? So a little girl, she raised her hand and she says to me in broken Tamil and English, she said, well, apart from the fact that improper replication of the DNA molecule causes disease, we haven't understood anything else. I've tried this in many, many schools. That's been tried all over the world. And teachers stand back and say, it just happens by itself? And I said, yeah, it happens by itself. How did you know that? And I said, you won't believe the children who told me and where they're from. So what's happening here? I think what we need to look at is we need to look at learning as the product of educational self-organization. If you allow the educational process to self-organize, then learning emerges. It's not about making learning happen, it's about letting it happen. The teacher sets the process in motion, and then she stands back in awe and watches as learning happens. I think that's what all this is pointing at.
So Dr. Mitra, we'll hear more from him later in the show, including what he wants to do with this discovery. But coming up, another place where learning happens just by being there. I'm Guy Raz. You're listening to the TED Radio Hour from NPR. It's the TED Radio Hour from NPR. I'm Guy Raz, and on the show today, unstoppable learning, how learning happens even when we're not aware of it.
And in that spirit, I want to spring on you all a pop quiz. Ready? When does learning begin?
This is from a TED Talk given by science writer Annie Murphy Paul.
Now, as I ponder that question, maybe you're thinking about the first day of preschool or kindergarten, or maybe you've called to mind the toddler phase when children are learning how to walk and talk and use a fork. Maybe you've encountered the 0 to 3 movement, which asserts that the most important years for learning are the earliest ones. Well, today I want to present to you an idea that may be surprising, that may even seem implausible, but which is supported by the latest evidence from psychology and biology. And that is that some of the most important learning we ever do happens before we're born, while we're still in the womb.
Amy's TED Talk was about this relatively new field of study called fetal origins.
And it's based on the theory that our health and well-being throughout our lives is crucially affected by the 9 months we spend in the womb. When we hold our babies for the first time, we might imagine that they're clean slates, unmarked by life. When in fact, they've already been shaped by us and by the particular world we live in. Today I want to share with you some of the amazing things that scientists are discovering about what fetuses learn while they're still in their mother's bellies.
And it's real loud in there, right?
Oh yeah. Because there's some of its heart and breathing, which is like there's a lot of sort of pressure sounds like the woman's digestive system is right there.
It's like a symphony of organs.
Yes, and then of course her voice, which is probably very sounds kind of like the teacher's voice. So it's really noisy in there.
They're coming out like CBGB. And the baby's coming out.
Hello, baby. Hi, baby. Because, and they're like, why are you whispering? Because it was really loud.
Yeah, and they're like, this is weird, I'm gonna cry. We tend to think of the fetus as sealed off in this bubble, but really they are here in the world with us.
Are there learning things in the womb that we can measure? Like we know they're learning?
Yes, we know that fetuses are learning in the sense of becoming familiar with certain stimuli. Let me give you an example. The sound of your mother's voice. Once the baby's born, it recognizes her voice, and it prefers listening to her voice over anyone else's. How can we know this? Newborn babies can't do much, really big. Researchers take advantage of this fact by rigging up 2 rubber nipples so that if a baby sucks on one, it hears a recording of its mother's voice on a pair of headphones, and if it sucks on the other nipple, it hears a recording of a female stranger's voice. Babies quickly show their preference by choosing the first one. My favorite experiment of this kind is the One that showed that the babies of women who watched a certain soap opera every day during pregnancy recognized the theme song of that show once they were born. So fetuses are even learning about the particular language that's spoken in the world that they'll be born into. A study published last year found that from the moment of birth, babies cry in the accent of their mother's native language.
Okay, so Annie, we have some audio of a French baby and a German baby. Take a listen. This is the German baby. Okay, here's the French baby. Okay, so again, German, French. Can you hear a difference?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you can actually, can't you?
Sure, the French baby sounded like the inflection was kind of rising. The baby sounded like his or her cry was going down. Now, why would this kind of fetal learning be useful? It may have evolved to aid the baby's survival. From the moment of birth, the baby responds most to the voice of the person who is most likely to care for it, its mother. It even makes its cries sound like the mother's language, which may further endear the baby to the mother, and which may give the baby a head start in the critical task of learning how to understand and speak its native language. But it's not just sounds that fetuses are learning about in utero. It's also tastes and smells. By 7 months of gestation, the fetus's taste buds are fully developed, and its olfactory receptors, which allow it to smell, are functioning. The flavors of the food a pregnant woman eats find their way into the amniotic fluid, which is continuously swallowed by the fetus. Babies seem to remember and prefer these tastes once they're out in the world. In one experiment, a group of pregnant women was asked to drink a lot of carrot juice during their 3rd trimester of pregnancy, while another group of pregnant women, drank only water. 6 months later, the women's infants were offered cereal mixed with carrot juice, and their facial expressions were observed while they ate it. The offspring of the carrot juice drinking women ate more carrot-flavored cereal, and from the looks of it, they seemed to enjoy it more. A sort of French version of this experiment was carried out in Dijon, France, where researchers found that mothers who consumed food and drink flavored with licorice-flavored anise during pregnancy showed a preference for anise on their first day of life, and again when they were tested later on their 4th day of life. Babies whose mothers did not eat anise during pregnancy showed a reaction that translated roughly as yuck. What this means is that fetuses are effectively being taught by their mothers about what is safe and good to eat. Fetuses are also being taught about the particular culture that they'll be joining through one of culture's most powerful expressions, which is food. They're being introduced to the characteristic flavors and spices of their culture's cuisine even before birth. Things like the woman's diet, the woman's stress level, even the woman's sort of mental state, these things can be communicated to the fetus, and they're incredibly plastic, they're incredibly malleable, and they're already preparing for exactly the sort of environment that they're going to enter even before their very first day on Earth.
That's unbelievable.
One of my favorite findings is that eating chocolate when you're pregnant seems to be connected to having a happier baby.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I researched and wrote this book when I was pregnant with my second child, and I took that as license to eat as much chocolate as I would. And he is quite a happy baby, I should say. Fetal origins research is about discovering how best to promote the health and well-being of the next generation. That important effort must include a focus on what fetuses learn during the 9 months they spend in the womb. Learning is one of life's most essential activities, and it begins much earlier than we ever imagined. Thank you.
Central to Annie Murphy Paul. Check out our full talk at TED.com. So imagine just how much activity is happening in your brain in those 9 months, right? Well, that may be nothing compared to what comes next, which brings us to Alison Gopnik.
I'm a professor in the Department of Psychology at University of California, Berkeley, and an affiliate professor of philosophy at Berkeley as well.
And
I study babies and young children and what they can tell us about what it means to be human. After all, we're just babies and young children that have been around a little bit longer.
yeah, we're like giant babies, not as easy to like.
Not as cute and probably not as smart either.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to understanding a baby's brain, Alison Gopnik says, we're in the midst of a scientific revolution. And when she started her TED Talk, she pointed to a photo of a baby.
What is going on in this baby's mind? If you'd asked people this 30 years ago, most people, including psychologists, would have said that this baby was irrational, illogical, egocentric, that he couldn't take the perspective of another person or understand cause and effect.
That was the picture of children for a long, long time, both in science and philosophy, that somehow children were adults with pieces missing.
And now, she says the minds of babies are like the minds of
The most brilliant scientists.
the most brilliant scientist.
Even these tiny babies are already doing a lot of the kinds of thinking and learning that we think of as being the learning of very sophisticated scientists. If you just pretty much take a random 15-month-old, just sit and watch them for 10 minutes and count up how many experiments, how much thinking you see going on, and it will put the most brilliant scientists to shame.
But what are they doing in just a matter of 10 minutes?
Well, let me give you the example of going for a walk with Augie, my grandson. What does Augie do? Well, the first thing that he does is he sees that there's a little brick path that goes off to one side, and actually, if you climb up, you can get up one step of that brick path. So then he tries to get up the step, and then he tries it again. And then he tries it again. And then he notices that there's actually some flowers, not really actually dandelions, but flowers as far as he's concerned, that are off in the grass. So then he has to lean over and try and see, are those flowers the same as the flowers that I saw before? And he will actually blow on them, so they blow on other dandelions. Then he'll suddenly say, play? And he hears the plane that's way up out of the, in the distant corner that I haven't even paid any attention to. He's observing and experimenting and trying to come to grips with all of these things that we just take for granted because we learned about them when we were 15-month-olds. And if you just look at children's exploratory play, just, getting into everything, it turns out that they're actually getting into everything in a way that is systematic and will tell them about how things work out there in the world.
I think babies and children are actually more conscious than we are as adults. Adult attention and consciousness look kind of like a spotlight. Our consciousness of that thing that we're attending to becomes extremely bright and vivid, and everything else sort of goes dark. If we look at babies and young children, we see something very different, seem to have more of a lantern of consciousness than a spotlight of consciousness. So babies and young children are very bad at narrowing down to just one thing, but they're very good at taking in lots of information from lots of different sources at once. And if you actually look in their brains, you see that they're flooded with these neurotransmitters that are really good at inducing learning and plasticity, and the inhibitory parts haven't come on yet.
But how do we really know they're learning all this stuff? It's obviously not easy to ask a baby. So Alison Gopnik started to think about a way to approach it.
Maybe we could ask children about what they think about other people by using some very, very simple facts about little babies, which is that they like to eat some things and they don't like to eat other things. They really like goldfish crackers, for example, and they really don't like raw broccoli. So we thought, well, maybe we could take this very basic fact and find a way to ask whether they understood what somebody else wanted.
So Alison tried this out with a bunch of babies, including this one, Nathan.
What we did first of all was take a little bit of food from each bowl.
Yeah, that's broccoli. And what's that? That's crackers.
And make a kind of exaggerated version of either a disgusted face or a happy face.
Broccoli.
And
Oh, yeah,
crackers.
I don't like crackers.
And then give the baby the 2 bowls of food and say, can you give me some?
Could you give me some of buttermilk?
Well, you liked the broccoli instead of the crackers. The 18-month-olds would actually give the broccoli.
Thank you so much.
So they seem to still think, okay, I like crackers. But this other person, strange that it may seem, this other person likes broccoli. And if they like broccoli, I should give them broccoli.
Which means that they're starting to become empathetic.
Well, in a way, they were going beyond empathy. They were actually being altruistic. They were actually taking into account the perspective of the other person. Now, one of the interesting things is that the 15-month-olds actually didn't do that. The 15-month-olds only gave the crackers. So it seemed as if they had somehow learned to do that between the time they were 15 months and the time they were 18 months.
But when you think about it, 18 months, I mean, that's a long time, especially when you compare us to other mammals.
Why would we have this long period when we're completely incompetent and when our parents have to put so much time and energy into taking care of us? I mean, it's kind of an evolutionary paradox. One idea, which I think you actually see across the animal kingdom, is that early period of apparent uselessness is there because it gives us this capacity to explore. Childhood is a separate evolutionary stage of what it is to be a human being. We have bigger brains relative to our bodies by far than any other animal. We're smarter, we're more flexible, we can learn more, we survive in more different environments. And our babies and children are dependent on us for much longer than the babies of any other species. My son is 23, and at least until they're 23, we're still popping those bananas into those little open mouths.
Allison, when does it end? When is it like extreme phase of learning just stop?
Well, I don't think it ever stops. That's kind of the good news. So, of course, if we stayed like my adorable 15-month-old grandson forever, then we'd need to have parents and grandparents taking care of us all the time. That would not actually be a functional way to be an adult. Sometimes I say going to the 7-Eleven to get a pint of milk with Andy is like going for a walk with William Blake. Suddenly the amazingness and awesomeness of a universe in the grain of sand is vivid to you as an adult. And if you've ever lived with an incredibly creative, genius, romantic poet, you might think that there are some drawbacks to that as well as advantages. So we do eventually have to grow up. Now, it's good to be a grown-up. I don't want to say too much about how wonderful babies are. It's good to be a grown-up. We can do things like tie our shoelaces and cross the street by ourselves. And it makes sense that we put a lot of effort into actually making babies think like adults do. But if what we want is to have open-mindedness, open learning, imagination, creativity, innovation, maybe at least some of the time we should be getting the adults to start thinking more like children.
That's Allison Gopnik. You can find her full talk at ted.npr.org. Last night I was putting my 4-year-old to bed and he just said, "Teddy, can you tell me everything about the world?" And I said, "Everything?" He said, "Yeah, can you tell me everything about the world?" Our show today, Unstoppable Learning. I'm Guy Raz, and this is the TED Radio Hour from NPR. Stay with us. It's the TED Radio Hour from NPR. I'm Guy Raz. And on the show today, we're talking to TED speakers about how learning happens, how ultimately it's an unstoppable process. And as we heard from Surat Mitra earlier in the show, learning doesn't happen in a vacuum. It still depends on making a connection between a child and his mother, or between two kids, or even a student and a teacher.
We learn from the environments that we live in, which includes people. So I don't think we do anything on our own or alone.
This is Rita Pearson. She's been an educator for more than 40 years, and when she gave her talk at TED Talks Education, she spoke about the power of human connection and how it impacts learning. Here's her talk.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the school, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences, low influence with parents. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection, relationships. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me. They don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you're on the road. You got too small. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. And say 18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad.
I love that. I love that you did that to that kid's test.
And we started to think that if I point out to you what you don't do or you didn't do, you to do, that doesn't make sense to me. If I tell you what you've done right, it inspires something else that's right. Students to always see the value of possibility. And that's what I wanted him to see. That I am worth more, I can do more, I am more. +2 said that, -18 would not have said that.
For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in a desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. All your children? Of course not. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
It's Rita Pearson's TED Talk, and Rita, we heard from Sugata Mitra earlier in the show. We're going to hear a bit more from him in a few minutes, and he talks a lot about how sometimes adults just get in the way. They don't allow kids to just kind of figure it out and learn on their own.
And to a degree, that's true. Sometimes I think we do need to be quiet and say, okay, let's see what you come up with. Let's see what your idea is. Tell me how you would figure this out. So yes, it is very, very true that sometimes adults do get in the way of learning, but they cannot be absent from learning.
Can learning happen without that?
I don't think so. And I may be wrong. Children thrive on structure, but freedom. But I think that it is reassuring for children to know that while I may not always want an adult in my business, so to speak, I want to know a positive and nurturing adult is there if I need them.
Rita, that kid who missed 18 questions, did he ever get better?
Of course he did. I insisted that he did. Learning sometimes occurs because someone insists that you recognize the excellence in yourself. Sometimes it's as simple as, I know you can do this. I feel like you are better than you showed me on that paper. Let's learn how positive and potent you are together. So yes, he did better. Of course he did.
Rita Pearson, she's been an educator for more than 40 years. She gave her talk at TED Talks Education on PBS. Now, here's the thing about learning. The thing that connects the dots, either a fetus or an infant or a child or an adult, there has to be some type of human-to-human connection for it all to work, which is what Sugata Mitra found out when he started to dig deeper into how we learn. So remember how he stuck that computer in a wall in a slum in New Delhi?
In fact, after the first day, I had to shut the computer down after sunset because the mothers were complaining that the kids wouldn't come home.
What those mothers didn't understand, what Sugata initially didn't understand himself, was that the kids were teaching themselves. Those kids with no access to technology, they were typing, they were playing games, they were teaching themselves biology and English, all with a machine they had never used before. And it got Sugata thinking about the way all children learn. Here's how he explained it in his TED Talk.
If you look at present-day schooling the way it is, it's quite easy to figure out where it came from. It came from about 300 years ago. Imagine trying to run the show, trying to run the entire planet without computers, without telephones, with data handwritten on pieces of paper and traveling by ships. But the Victorians actually did it. What they did was amazing. They created a global computer made up of people. It's still with us today. It's called the bureaucratic administrative machine. In order to have that machine running, you need lots and lots of people. They made another machine to produce those people, the school. The schools would produce the people who would then become parts of the bureaucratic administrative machine. They must have good handwriting because the data is handwritten. They must be able to read, and they must be able to do multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction in their head. They must be so identical that you could pick one up from New Zealand and ship them to Canada, and he would be instantly functional. are we doing with that design that produces these identical people? It's quite fashionable to say that the education system is broken. It's not broken. It's wonderfully constructed. It's just that we don't need it anymore. It's outdated. What's the kind of jobs that we have today? Well, the clerks are the computers. They're there in thousands in every office. And you have people who guide those computers to do their clerical jobs. Those people don't need to be able to write beautifully by hand. They don't need to be able to multiply numbers in their heads. They do need to be able to read. In fact, they need to be able to read discerningly. But that's today. What will it be tomorrow? Could it be that we don't need to go to school at all? Could it be that at the point in time when you need to know something, you can find out in 2 minutes? Could it be a devastating question that we are heading towards, or maybe in a future where knowing is obsolete?
A future where knowing is obsolete? I mean, could it ever be obsolete?
Yeah, actually, I love that question. Is knowing obsolete? We're in an age where knowing is not a big deal. And therefore, the current assessment system of examinations is ridiculous because it relies on the old Victorian concept of knowledge being resident inside the human brain in a form such that it is reproducible at a moment's notice. But our children are not growing up in that age. They're growing up in an age where everything that humanity has ever known is inside their pockets. And we're telling them, no, don't keep staring at your mobile phone all the time, and don't huddle up with your computer all the time. Read a book. I don't know if you're doing the right thing.
I don't want my kid in front of the internet all the time. I mean, we live at that time. We want them in front of books. Is that wrong?
I don't know, but I would say I agree with the first part of what you said, that you don't want him huddled over his computer all the time. But I would say instead, maybe you and he and maybe a couple of other fathers and mothers and a couple of other children, maybe you could all get together with a really big screen and drift free into cyberspace altogether. You could take something that's real. So what's so great about the Higgs boson, and why is it billions of dollars on the Higgs boson and people don't have enough to eat? Research tomorrows. I can tell you won't regret it.
That sounds like a fun night, actually. I might do that. I'm serious.
Well, try it. I have a name for it. It's called a self-organized learning environment.
Self-organized learning environment. Sugata calls them souls, and he wants to build schools that are more like souls all over the world. But what would they look like? And who would be there to supervise? Well, Sugata stumbled on a possible answer during his research in India. It was in a village called Kalikupam, and the children there were using his computers. They had learned a pretty impressive amount on their own about DNA replication, but at a certain point, they hit a wall. They just couldn't improve.
How do I get them to pass? I have to get them 20 more marks. I couldn't find a teacher. What I did find was a friend that they had, a 22-year-old girl who was an accountant, and she played with them all the time. So I asked this girl, can you help them? So she says, absolutely not. I didn't have science in school. I have no idea what they're doing under that tree all day long. I can't help you. I said, I'll tell you what, use the method of the grandmother. So she says, what's that? I said, stand behind them. Whenever they do anything, you just say, well, wow, I mean, how did you do that? What's the next page? Gosh, when I was your age, I could have never done that. I mean, you know what grannies do. So she did that for 2 more months. The scores jumped to 50%. Kalikupam had caught up with my control school in New Delhi, a rich private school with a trained biotechnology teacher. When I saw that graph, I knew there is a way to level the playing field. Encouragement seems to be the key. If you look at Kupam, if you look at all of the experiments that I did, it was simply saying, wow, saluting learning. There is evidence from neuroscience the reptilian part of our brain, which sits in the center of our brain, when it's threatened, it shuts down everything else. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the parts which learn. It shuts all of that down. Punishment and examinations are seen as threats. We take our children, we make them shut their brains down, and then we say, perform. Why did they create a system like that? Because it was needed. There was an age in the age of empires when you needed those people who can survive under threat. When you're standing in a trench all alone, if you could have survived, you're okay, you passed. If you didn't, you failed. But the age of empires is gone. We need to shift that balance back from threat to pleasure. We don't want to be spare parts for a great human computer, do we? So we need to design a future for learning. My wish is to help design a future of learning by supporting children all over the world to tap into their wonder and their ability to work together. Help me build, it will be called a school in the cloud. It will be a school where children go on these intellectual adventures driven by the big questions which the mediators put in. The way I want to do this is to build a facility where I can study this. It's a facility which is practically unmanned. The lights are turned on and off by the cloud, etc., etc. Everything is done from the cloud. And just one last thing, I'll take you to the top of the Himalayas. At 12,000 feet, where the air is thin, they once built 2 computers. The children slept there. There was this little girl who was following me around. And I said to her, I want to give a computer to everybody, every child. I don't know, what should I do? And I was trying to take a picture of her, quietly. She suddenly raised her hand like this and said to me, get on with it.
You got to meet her. And that wish to build schools all over the world, well, it's on its way to becoming a reality. Sugata was awarded the 2013 TED Prize, $1 million toward his goal of revolutionizing the future of learning. You can find out more about that at TED.com/prize. Thanks for listening to the show this week. If you missed any of it, or if you want to hear more, or you want to find out more about who's on it, you can visit ted.npr.org. You can also find many more TED Talks at TED.com. You can download the show through iTunes or through the NPR smartphone app. The program was produced by Jeff Rogers, Brent Bachman, Megan Kane, Eva Grant, and Sanaz Mishkinpour, with help from Portia Robertson-Migas and Eric Newsom. Thanks to our partners at TED, Chris Anderson, Gene Cullen, Darren Triff, and Janet Lee. I'm Guy Raz. You've been listening to Ideas Worth Spreading here on the TED Radio Hour from NPR.